Hi everyone, a really warm welcome back. I wanted to put together a little introduction to this video, or perhaps it's a warning, because this video is a little bit different to normal. There are a few topics like gas and carrying bikes and so on that, we've learned a huge amount since we started camping and caravanning. And so I wanted to put together a video that was a lot more in depth, so a lot more about the experience that we've developed and the things we've found out. And of course, a lot of that comes from scientific and technical advice that's coming from the main clubs themselves. And of course, I am a trained scientist, so day to day, I still have the huge honour of working with some of the UK and, in fact, the world's most up and coming and best scientists. So, I simply couldn't resist referencing some of this stuff within the video and how it's actually helped us to decide what we're doing and how we approach these things. Now, that's not to say it's a technical guide. If you want technical, go to the clubs, go to the club websites, go to the information, and you'll get everything you need, chapter and verse there, rather than just seeing what somebody else happens to be doing at the time. I'm going out on a bit of a limb here producing these videos because they're not quite technical videos, but they're also not jolly holiday vlogs either. They're sort of our experience with a technical issue. So, let me know what you think. I've got two developed, one about gas and one about carrying bikes, and I'll put both of those out. But I'd absolutely love to hear your feedback because I've got other ideas around things like the science of fridges and why you need fans in caravan fridges and you don't need them at home and that sort of thing. Little explainers from a user perspective rather than a technical guide specifically. So let me know what you think. If it's useful and you quite like hearing me waffling on about semi-technical stuff for quite a few minutes, then let me know and I'm happy to produce them because they do take a reasonable amount of time to put together, so I wouldn't want to be putting effort into stuff that people don't like. Anyway, that's the warning. Get ready for some technical waffling, and I hope it's useful. It's certainly our real life experiences. Anyway, let's get into the video itself. Hopefully my waffling about some of these technical things, but from a real user perspective, is helpful. But let me know in the comments below. Let me know what you think, and let's get going into the video for today. Catch you later. Everybody ready? Good. Then let's get going. Nearly forgot you guys. Okay, so before we get into caravan and motorhome gas, let's talk camping or camper van gas. Realistically, this is a camping gas, that's gas with a Z, 907 cylinder, and it holds 2.75 kilograms of butane. We'll come on to the difference between butane and propane and what butane and so on is in a moment. So this 907 cylinder belongs to, if you like, a series of cylinders. There's another one, for example, with the same diameter but being shorter in height, and that's called the 904. And then there's another one which is both short and narrow, and that's called the 901. Now, the 901 only holds 450 grams, so just short of half a kilogram of butane. So all different sizes. All three cylinders, though, use exactly the same camping gas screw-in regulator. That's the bit that screws in at the top of the cylinder itself after you've unscrewed this little plastic carrying handle thing. And that's what you control the flow of the gas out of the cylinder with. And it needs to be controlled so that it can go into your appliance at the correct pressure, because you want it coming out at a nice, fairly even pressure. And in this case, it's 28 millibars. You can get gas stoves and heaters and so on that screw directly into the cylinder itself, and that has presumably has its own regulator within the mechanism, but obviously make sure that's compatible with camping gas cylinder itself. If you've got an empty cylinder to exchange, you swap it for a full one, and that will cost about £25, apparently regardless of the size of the cylinder. So if you've got the space, you might as well carry the large one. If you don't have an empty cylinder, then you have to pay for one of those as well, and that's about an extra £10 or £15, which is related to the size of the cylinder. All the empty cylinders are refilled by the manufacturer, so you must never, ever, ever attempt to fill it up yourself. And also don't expect a nice clean new cylinder when you swap your empty for a full, because they just go round and round and round, and who knows how old the cylinder would be. But obviously they're all tested and checked when they're filled. So these camping gas cylinders are ubiquitous on the continent, so they're easy to swap wherever you are in Europe. But they don't hold that much gas, and so they're pretty expensive for refills relative to Cala and other systems that I'll talk about in a minute. Though they are small, so on the plus side, they're relatively easy to carry, so it might be good as an extra bottle for standalone barbecues for caravanners or motorhomers or so on, as well as being good obviously for low volume users such as tent campers and van owners and so on. So in our folding camper, we had a 907 cylinder, which was mainly used for the barbecue, but we also had an adapter so we could connect it up to the folding camper itself and use that to run the hob and the oven and the grill and the fridge that were on board within the trailer itself. So this was great because the gas locker itself on the folding camper was such a pain to get into, because it was necessarily small, understandably, because the trailer's much smaller. And also in there, we had a 4.5 kilogram butane cylinder from Cala. And that looks like this. So Cala is a UK brand and fairly easy to exchange the cylinders at fuel stations or campsites, or actually quite a few garden centres can swap them as well. Or even online, actually. You can get home delivery nowadays, so that is super. There are other brands available like Flowgas, but where we lived, Cala was the most readily available one. It might not be for you though, so check out what's available in your area. So like the previous cylinders, you'll need an empty one to exchange. And for Cala, you effectively pay a deposit for renting the cylinder, and then you can return it at whatever point in the future and get some money back. The deposit for the most common camping and caravanning sizes is £39.99 at the time I'm recording this, so go check out on their website what it is at the time you're interested in picking up your cylinder. So you pay your £39.99 as the deposit and the rental on the cylinder, and then if you return the cylinder itself within the first year, you currently get back 70% of that £39.99. If you've still got the rental agreement, that is, of course, the paperwork. So each year the amount you can claim back decreases, and that steadily steps down until you get to a 25% refund. So in other words, £10 back if you've had the agreement over 7 years. If in that time you've lost the paperwork, you can still get £7.50 back currently. But obviously, as I said, check out the Cala website in case things have been updated since I recorded this. The cylinder agreements from Cala come in different size categories, so even if you originally sign up for a 4.5 kilo butane, you can exchange an empty one of those for either a full 7 kilos butane or propane gases in equivalent cylinder sizes, and we'll talk about propane in a minute. So refills are currently £18.95 for the 4.5 kilo butane, or £25.95 for the 7 kilo butane. So you can see that Cala at £25.95 gives you 7 kilograms compared to, what was it, 2.75 in camping gas of butane. So much better value than camping gas, but also much larger cylinders, and so much heavier and awkward. So it depends on your application which one suits you best. It's not just about the money. So also note that you'll need a screw-in regulator for the 4.5 kilo butane cylinders and a clip-on one for the 7 or the 15 kilogram butanes. Places that stock cylinders also tend to keep regulators, and they're not expensive, about £10 a piece. So it's hopefully easy to get hold of the right one. So obviously you only need a regulator if you're taking gas directly from the cylinder itself into the appliance. If you're connecting into a modern caravan or a camper van, then there's probably a regulator built in and screwed to the bulkhead somewhere. So you just need the correct connection hose. So these are rubber hoses, and any decent accessory shop will, I'm sure, have a good supply of those. And you need to look to renew the hose every 5 years, or for some hoses supplied by Truma, I think it's 7, and it'll be marked on it if it's a longer life one. And whoever services your vehicle should advise you or may well replace the hose for you. So servicing is really important, especially for testing of gas appliances, making sure everything's working exactly as should be and you're not getting any inefficient burning or any leaks. So that's all about different cylinder sizes, and cylinder sizes tend to be consistent across different manufacturers. So there's not just Cala, but there's flow gas and others as well. But what about types of gases? So I've talked about butane, and for Cala, that's the stuff in the blue cylinders, but there's also propane, which tends to come in these reddy cylinders. Some people call them orange, but they look much more red to me. And yes, that also needs a different regulator or a specific hose that fits the different connection available on the bottle. It's all to make sure you've got the right technology. It's all different, so you shouldn't be able to mix them up with each other. So what's the difference between butane and propane, and which one do you need? Well, let's get nerd mode on. And so this is the molecular model of butane. It's 4 carbon atoms making up the backbone itself. So these are shown as the black spheres, with the hydrogen atoms shown as the white spheres bonded to the individual black carbon atoms. So obviously this is a molecular model. Do not expect that if you've got your super duper microscope out and scaled down and can see the individual atoms, they would look like this. They do not. Anyway, this is a model of what the thing looks like. This is a conventional molecular model that we use in chemistry. So each carbon can have a maximum of 4 bonds, and each of the hydrogens can only have 1. So this is why you get this structure with the formula C4H10. And propane is almost exactly the same thing. They're cousins of each other. They're in what's called the alkane series of hydrocarbons, meaning they have very similar structures and so very similar properties. But propane, rather than having 4 carbons, has just the 3 carbons and 8 hydrogens, so just one less middle one in that chain. So here's a screenshot from BBC Bite Size for GCSE, so you can see how the formulas work out and how it looks laid out as a very simple letters and sticks model. Okay, right, molecular structure lecture over, but what does this mean in real life? It means that butane boils at -1 degree C, so just below the freezing point of water, while propane does so at about -42 degrees C, which means that in real life, in cold weather, you'll have trouble getting butane out of the cylinder itself because it will want to stay as a liquid and won't want to come out as a gas itself. So that's one point. Butane has a density of 2.48 kilograms per cubic meter, whereas propane, so that propane is the C3H8 one. Propane is a fraction over 2 kilos, so a little bit lighter for the same volume of gas, which means for the same volume of gas, your butane cylinder will be heavier. And then there's the issue of energy content. But because of the different densities, if we measure by weight, butane produces 47.39 megajoules per kilogram and propane 49.58. But in other words, what does that mean for real life? Well, we know that the cylinder of butane is 7 kilograms versus the same volume size cylinder, so the cylinder being exactly the same size, but it holds 6 kilograms of propane, which means you'll get 331.73 megajoules of energy from the butane cylinder compared to only 297.48 megajoules from the same size cylinder. So in other words, to sum that all up, the propane cylinder is lighter, but it produces a small amount less energy from the contents, but that energy can be used at much lower temperatures. So also in butane's favour is that it's more environmentally friendly to produce the stuff, actually, because it takes less energy to squash it down, to liquefy it into the container itself. But obviously you're carrying more weight around, so you've got to balance energy in manufacture with energy that you're expending in the vehicle for driving the extra kilogram around. So it's all very complex. Anyway, what does that mean? Well, that means I would recommend you choose butane if you only need this stuff in the summer, or for example the cylinder is kept inside a warm vehicle in a proper metal gas box, though obviously, and you don't mind carrying around the extra weight, and that you choose propane for all year round use, especially if it's, for example, in a caravan gas locker where you've just got the thin skim of the gas locker door between you and the outside. Calolite is still propane. It's exactly the same stuff inside the cylinder, but the cylinder itself is supposed to be a lighter weight. But those are gradually being phased out because I believe Cala was having some problems with the valves or the connection or the design of the cylinder somehow. So as a result of that, I've been looking at refillable cylinders, and let's have a look at what I chose. What is it that the Gruffalo says? Aha, ahee, what could it be? Let's see. Bit of a giveaway on this side. Oh, you can't see it fully in the video. It's very well cling filmed. Top marks for severe wrapping. Oh, more wrapping. There we go. 7.5 kilos safe fill. So this is a safe fill refillable cylinder, one of the very few brands that you can actually fill up yourself. So it's not a case of sending it back to the manufacturer for a swapped cylinder. There are these for the standalone cylinders themselves, or motorhomers seem to be quite fond of putting a fully built-in system, so bottles obviously that you can remove, but that you can actually fit with a system and a filler cap on the outside of your vehicle. So actually you can just take it into the fuel station, plug it in and fill up the bottles directly without having to fill the bottle itself. So brands involved in that, for example, are Gassit or Gaslow systems. I'll pop a link above to the Extreme Motorhoming Adventures channel because they recently fitted theirs. You might find that quite interesting, and you can see in much more detail about a built-in self-filling system on their vehicle. So all of these can be filled at LPG pumps in fuel stations. Some places don't understand refillable standalone cylinders though. So occasionally you hear of people having problems filling their standalone cylinders because the staff in the fuel station don't understand the concept of safe fill and may think they're trying to do something illegal, because of course it's in the collective memory of the nation that you do not refill your own cylinders. Now, Safe Fill obviously are trying to get the word out, and they're gradually signing on more and more fuel stations and making sure the staff are trained up. But with 1,400 LPG filling stations in the UK across various different brands, that may take a while. So the key thing to do is to check on the Safe Fill website to see what filling stations are available, and that includes all, for example, Morrison's filling stations that have LPG available. You can also download the manual and use that to show staff in case that helps you to convince them that it's fine for you to fill your cylinder. But obviously you need to make sure you've got a source of LPG before you decide whether one of these things is for you. Okay, so what on earth is this LPG stuff? Well, LPG means liquefied petroleum gas, or, yep, you guessed it, it's a collective name for propane and butane. So both of those are known as LPG. LPG is this catch-all name. And both of these are, of course, byproducts of the oil and gas industry, and they'd otherwise just be burnt off, so it's making good use of these materials. So the major upsides of these cylinders are weight, especially for these plastic safe fill ones anyway, and the cost of refills. So to refill this 7.5 kilo bottle is somewhere around £8 or £9, compared to £25 for a 7 kilo butane or a 6 kilo propane cylinder from Cala. So if you use a lot of gas, you can very soon make your money back from the cost of buying the cylinder itself. So this one, for example, this 7.5 kilo one was £169 and came from Stenner's in Yeovil in Somerset. I've no link to the company, I just got excellent service from them. I actually had it delivered and they delivered it next day, and I got a very periodic update email, so I knew exactly where the order was, that they'd had it. It was all very nicely packed. So given that excellent experience, I'm very happy to recommend them, and I'll pop a link in the description below. So with these bottles, there's no deposit on these things. You actually own the entire bottle. I don't know how long they're expected to last, but in the paperwork it says you're supposed to have them recertified every 10 years. So have a suitable place, check them, ensure they're keeping all their pressure up and all the rest of it, and recertify it. And if the manufacturer expects you to do that every 10 years, then I would assume they expect a very long service life from them. So the only downsides I can see at the moment, but bear in mind we haven't had this long, so I'll have to come back and report to you once we've been using it for quite a while, is that if something does go wrong with the bottle, then of course you're responsible for replacing it if it's outside the guarantee period, and not just swapping it like you could do if you had a slightly dodgy cylinder from one of the manufacturers where you have to swap them. So also, because you're using an LPG pump, you don't know precisely what's going in there. So it's coming out from a big LPG tank in a fuel station, and you don't know, for example, whether it's 100% propane or it's mixed with a bit of butane or what it is. It's my understanding that in the UK it's practically 100% propane in the winter, and then towards the summer it does get a mix of butane in, depending on what's been coming out of the oil and gas industry. And that's the case in the summer. So if it turns out that we don't use a lot of gas, then I'll be very conscious to keep it topped up throughout the winter, and then sort of run it down during the summer to ensure that I'm able to top it up again when it's winter again and it's a much higher content of propane. And then I won't be stuck with the higher butane content as the temperatures start to fall. So some folks do worry that you won't get the purity of gas that you get with the swappable cylinders themselves. They worry that because there's various tankers and gas lorries involved, and then it has to go to the fuel station and so on, that there might be, I don't know, perhaps more water in there or something like that. And so here's a picture, thanks to Rob Forrest for lending it to me. So Rob Forrest, that's a very active caravanner on Twitter, and this shows the filter that he's installed in line between his safe fill bottle and his bulkhead regulator in his caravan. And there are a number of people that have done that. So given that I tend to adopt the prevention is better than cure approach, I'm going to do exactly the same thing. So thanks again to Rob for the image. Incidentally, we briefly had an old style small 5 kilogram safe fill bottle before I realised that really it was too small for the caravan, but it was too large for the bus. So that's what you're looking at now, and we've been able to swap that one up to the 7.5 kilo, which is compared here to the Cala Light, so you can see that what the sizes are there. So that's it for everything I know about gas. I'm of course still learning, so do add any real world experiences please, or top tips into the comments section below, and then we can all learn from each other. That would be hugely appreciated. I chose safe fill for the lower weight and the flexibility that it gives us to be able to top up before we go anywhere, rather than having to wait for the entire cylinder to run out. More so than I did for the costs involved. But I am hoping that it will encourage us to be much more off-grid adventurous, because we won't have to worry about the cylinder running out part-way through the weekend, or the cost of Cala refills, or whether we can actually locate one, whether they have in stock the Cala Light that we want, because it's getting rarer and rarer nowadays. So as long as we've topped up before we go off, or there's an LPG pump nearby, then I will be much more confident in my gas use. So I'm looking forward to that. Anyway, I hope that was helpful. Thanks so much for sticking with it. Thanks so much for watching, and bye for today. Hear me again? Don't worry, it's not a chemistry lesson, just a slight PS. I'm off to get the safe fill refilled, so here's how I've strapped the bottle into the bus itself. Luckily I've got these D-loops as part of the floor track system, so just a couple of handy webbing straps, and off we go. We don't actually have a local self-service LPG pump, so I'll pop a link to a channel called Many Fun Adventures who showed how to fill theirs up from the pump themselves, and you can see how it happens and prepare yourself for the whoosh that happens when you take the pump off the bottle itself. We do have a local gas supplier though, Portable Gas Supplies. I think that might be their own brand, but they do have an LPG pump and they supply auto-gas for cars, and they'll fill the bottles for you. So I'm off there to get that sorted out. And for this first fill, I need to make sure that no more than 10 litres goes into the bottle. Alright, that's all sorted. That was super easy, and £6.20 something, I think. There is a £5 minimum spend here, so I'm going to need to make sure that we've used a reasonable amount of gas before I pop back and top it up. But that's okay, because we're going to run the home barbecue using this safe fill anyway. So thanks again for watching. Please do consider subscribing if you haven't already, and bye for now.